Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, March 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 175 days. The game against Michigan in 259 days. And the other game against Purdue is today. We're talking college basketball. Here's a moment of confession. Earlier this week, I did not expect to be talking Ohio State men's basketball on this show. But somehow the Ohio State men's basketball season is still going on. They just won their third game at the Big Ten tournament on Friday against Michigan State. They have now won more games in a 49-hour span, 3, than they did in 49 days between a January 5th loss to Purdue and a February 23rd loss to Penn State. They won 1 game in 49 days and then 3 games in 49 hours. Tony Gerdeman of Buckeye Huddle is here to help me make sense of this. And Tony, help me, I don't understand what is going on.
Tom, first of all, that is an incredible stat. So tell me after the show where you got it.
Twitter.com/TomOr4. That's where I got it.
I'll follow if you have not. Yeah, and this one was especially surprising because they went into it without Brice Sensabaugh, leading scorer, with knee soreness. But the thing that really did it for them in the first half was defense. And I think they're better able to play team defense with Brice Sensabaugh out. So it's not quite like the Patrick Ewing effect or whatever. But defensively, I think there a little bit was there where they were able to keep up that defensive intensity. And there weren't any, like lapses where, somebody that's on Brice Sensabaugh, just magically gets free and lays one in. So they really didn't have a lot of that. And you saw Chris Holtmann urging them to continue to play defense, and they made it very, very difficult for Michigan State all game long. I think to start the second half, Michigan State went on like a 9-2 run where they were getting some things, and that was about it. It was very difficult for most of the game for the Spartans.
Yeah, and you were not the only one who is linking the Brice Sensabaugh absence to Ohio State's better defense. After the game, Tom Izzo said, quote, "With Sensabaugh out, I thought they played better, definitely defensively." So, yeah, I mean, this is a team that has been kind of carried by its offense all year. They're 97th in defensive efficiency in KenPom right now. That's dreadful. That's bad. And then to win with defense now without Zed Key. So you don't have Zed Key. He's out for the season with the shoulder thing. You had no Brice Sensabaugh. Those were, at the time of that Purdue game that started this whole slide, that was when Zed Key hurt his shoulder in that game. Entering that game, you would have put Zed Key and Brice Sensabaugh probably at the top of the list of most important Ohio State players. They have no Zed Key for any of this tournament, neither of them for this game against Michigan State, and they still win. And, it is kind of just a combination of guys stepping up, and it was especially young guys. How much of this is just some of the guys who are freshmen, Felix Okpara, Roddy Gale, Bruce Thornton, the freshmen who are not Brice Sensabaugh, just, okay, you get to this point of the year and you're not a freshman anymore, and you're seasoned, and now you're ready to kind of take that next step.
Well, we saw Roddy Gale in the second half against all of these games. Iowa, I believe, a couple nights ago, scored 9 points in the second half, scored 15 points in this one, looking very comfortable, able to get, they were even using him in these last 2 games as a weapon, clear-out weapon for him to get to the basket, and he was very effective. But Bruce Thornton continues to play like a veteran ever since pretty much they re-voted for captains. But he's really been a scorer. He's been distributing the ball more, and that's another thing. They are assisting on more field goals than they have in a while, because they went during their losing stretch, they could have maybe 6 or 7 assists in a game for 25 field goals or whatever, and now they're 15 assists in this one on 25 field goals. I think the Iowa game, they assisted on maybe like 12 of 17 in the second half. So the ball movement is really there as well. So they're all coming together really well. And you mentioned the freshmen, and you look at the load that they had. Felix Okpara plays 35 minutes because there is no Zed Key. I think he got like 5 minutes on the bench, and Eugene Brown came in for him. So, and then the other guy coming off the bench was Isaac Likely, who played 19 minutes. This is basically just a 4.5 or 5.5 man rotation right now into their third game in 3 nights. and they beat Michigan State by 10 points, a team that, was much fresher, even though they had also played in back there. No, this is their first game. So it's really impressive the way Holtmann has gotten them to come together. And maybe these freshmen are, they're not worn down by the ravages of time. They're still young kids. They're how many, they play 3 games a day in AAU ball, and they're still, they're not too far out from that. So I guess they're better able to bounce back. But you've also seen Justice Suing stepping up as a scorer and a distributor, and of course Sean McNeil as well. And you knew both of them, especially today on against Michigan State, not having Sensabaugh, that Suing was going to have to step up as one of those front court scorers, and he did.
Yeah, he was plus 20 when he was on the floor, plus 14 for McNeil, plus 12 for Felix Okpara. I mean, those are numbers that are very, very impressive numbers. And, to your point on the fresh legs, the third game of these tournaments, when you are playing your third game in 3 days and you're playing a team that hasn't had to do that, that's typically when the legs start to go and you start to see the outside shots falling short and just not quite getting down the court as quick as getting beat down the court, not hitting the long shots because the legs are starting to go. That's typically when you see it is day 3. Okay, now they're through day 3. Now they got to do day 4, and I'm sure it's not going to get any easier, especially with, as you said, 4 guys playing 35 minutes. And, the guys who came off the bench, Ice Likely, 19 minutes, 2 points, both on free throws, 1 rebound. I mean, just 2 assists. You didn't get a whole heck of a lot out of him, so you wonder how much you're almost going to have to trust some of those other guys. But it feels like maybe Chris Holtmann has it took all season long, but maybe Chris Holtmann has sort of stumbled upon the best lineup here. Is this, how different is this season if some of these guys, if Roddy Gale's getting more minutes in January and February, does that really change things? Or do you think this is one of these things where it maybe kind of took the whole year for these guys to be ready to take that next step?
Yeah, it's one of those things where would Roddy Gale be playing like this if he hadn't been brought along exactly the way he was? And maybe, I know earlier in the season and during the middle of the season, he would have stretches where he would just get out of control, or, just something, just like bringing the ball up court at times at a good pace was too much for him. But now he's under much more control and is a much more confident player to the point where he's okay taking step back threes and doesn't look uncomfortable doing anything. And earlier in the season, I remember asking Holtmann about Roddy Gale, because they even put him in at point guard earlier in the season just to get him ready for later on down this time of the season when they might need it. And they like his overall game a lot, and his smarts, and they talk about his defense, and that's where he makes his money initially, and now he's becoming the scorer. And you think, well, if he was playing more earlier, then he would have blossomed sooner. I think that's true, because you look at, if Justice Suing played all last year, does Malachi Branham blossom as quickly as he did? No. Is Malachi Branham still on the team? Probably. If Justice Suing was there all year long and they didn't need somebody else to step up and help BJ Liddell, and that ultimately ended up being Malachi Branham, and then he goes on a tear. Like, if he was able to be as patient as they've been with Roddy Gale, then he'd be back and you'd have all of these different weapons. But I also think Roddy Gale would have blossomed more had he played more. That's just the process. But there is also a stretch, and you saw from Bruce Thornton, where during the middle half of the season, maybe the 60% of the middle of the season, he's got a guy just mainly just bringing the ball up the court. You're not getting offense out of him. You're not getting distribution out of him. You're just getting a guy who can help you break the press and then dribble the ball as they look for offense. But now they're all becoming more and more in tune. And even Felix Okpara, 5 blocks, he's becoming one of the best defensive centers, at least in terms of shot blocking, in the Big Ten. And he is going to become a force. And I know you and I, coming from the late 90s and early aughts, remember Ken Johnson and how he blossomed and became one of the best shot blockers in Ohio State history. And when you watch his game, Felix Okpara, you see that level of athleticism. And also, he's not out of range in terms of he's going to be a scorer offensively as well, like Ken Johnson eventually became.
Yeah, I was just about to name check Ken Johnson. You beat me to it. I do wonder now, does Felix Okpara play the piano? We'll have to ask about that. But yeah, 8 points, 8 boards for Okpara, 5 blocks. And that's, he's someone who has come from basically a non-factor in the early part of the season where he's playing 3-5 minutes to now 35 minutes and a significant impact on both ends of the floor. And now all he has to do, Tony, is stop Zach Edey. How hard can that be, right? I mean, the Buckeyes playing Purdue in the semifinals on Saturday. It's going to be Felix Okpara's deal to try and rein in one of the National Player of the Year contenders. We have seen Ohio State try and throw Eugene Brown on Edey when they just don't have that much size with Zed Key out. It feels like, especially on the 4th game in 4 days, that might be the deciding factor in that semifinal on Saturday.
I would assume Matt Painter's initial goal is get 2 fouls on Felix Okpara before the first media timeout, and then you play most of the first half without him, and you're dealing with Zach Edey against Eugene Brown. And what is that, Tom? Is that 10 inches of height advantage there and another probably 1.5 foot of arm length? And, boom, profit, basically. If they don't go right at Okpara to try and draw fouls, I think they'd be missing the boat because he's just a freshman. He's, like you said, this is going to be his 4th game in a row. The feet probably aren't moving as quickly as normally, even though he's still going to be one of the more athletic players on the court. But yeah, if they don't go right at him, I think they're pretty crazy.
The Buckeyes, win or lose on Saturday, have already made history this weekend. They are the lowest seed to ever make the Big Ten tournament semifinals as the 13 seed. It's there's a little bit of an asterisk on that stat because there was a team that had actually a worse record in Big Ten play that made the finals. That was 1999. I don't know if you remember this one, Tony. 1999 Illinois. Mm-hmm. They were 3-13 in league play. So they were dead last in the league. There were only 11 teams in the league then. But they won 3 games, including a semifinal win over the eventual Final Four and eventual not anymore Final Four, according to the NCAA, Ohio State team. They got to the final before losing to Michigan State. They were the 11th seed in an 11-team tournament. And I remember them talking on the broadcast on CBS, as always, even back then, it was the last game right before they do the selection show. So that really never tends to factor into the actual seeding unless it's a team that's either going to win and make it or lose and not make it. That was the case for Illinois. They fell 1 win short. Ohio State right now 2 wins away from potentially putting the committee in that spot. We're going to have to do another basketball show on Saturday night, Tony. I was not expecting that, but let's get you on the record right now. Are we going to have to do another basketball show on Sunday? Are we going to have a selection Sunday Ohio State basketball show against all odds?
I just think Zach Edey is going to be an awful lot to deal with. If they can get him in foul trouble, maybe they go with Okpara and take it to Edey. I think Ohio State's backcourt can hang with whatever Purdue throws at them. The size, I think, is eventually going to catch up with them. The size, and of course, 4 games in 4 days will be too much.
That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. But man, I would not have expected them to win on Friday. I would not necessarily have expected for them to win on Thursday. So that's they have defied expectations so far. What's 2 more wins? They're already more than halfway to earning a spot in the NCAA tournament. And win or lose, we will be back on Saturday evening / Sunday morning to talk about the Buckeyes and the Boilermakers. And then we will eventually get back to football talk as well. Buckeye football, of course, heading into spring break. So they'll have a little break, but we'll have shows coming up. Plenty of football stuff still to talk about. Lots of interviews we haven't gotten to yet. We'll have a lot of analysis on some of the stories to watch this spring from a bunch of folks at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, lots of recruiting coverage as well. This is a recruiting weekend at Ohio State as well. So we'll have Alex or Mark on at some point in the next couple of days to talk about that as well. So lots of fun stuff to talk about in the next few days at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.